which is why are resident permits of partners of St. Martiners still being issued with the condition that they are not allowed to work? Based on the court decision, it was ruled that we cannot put in the residency permit of a partner of a resident of St. Martin, not allowing them to work. And then there was another question asking to indicate where this is shown in the law and whether this was the purview of the minister. So following the court's ruling of November 30th, 2022, the necessary adjustments have been made to the restrictions section on the residence permits. So previously you would see under the conditions, arbeid is toegestaan or arbeid is niet toegestaan or arbeid is vrij toegestaan. We're working on removing that text from the different formats. What I've noticed is sometimes they still slip in, but we're working on those IT issues. However, so the restrictions now have been changed, and essentially what the arbeid is toegestaan, arbeid is niet toegestaan has been removed, and instead there's a text at the bottom indicating that your residency permit does not exempt you from the requirements of the Landsverordening Arbeid Vreemdelingen, which is our labor legislation, so that you, of course, regardless of the fact that you have a residency permit, you are still subject to those conditions as stipulated in that law, because the Minister of Justice, of course, cannot make any statements regarding the employability or the right of anybody to work, as that falls under the purview of the Minister of VSA. Then I have, why does the ministry accept the practice that a suspect who is in detention is automatically transferred into immigration detention on the request of the prosecutor? The prosecutor cannot and or does not have the authority to make the decision to transfer a suspect into immigration detention. If I am wrong, please indicate where in the law this is stated. It is not the public prosecutor that makes the decision of whether or not a person or a suspect is transferred into immigration detention. Immigration-related detention is overseen by the immigration authorities under the auspices of the Minister of Justice, often in conjunction then with judicial oversight. An interview is held with individuals who have been transferred, and their legal status on the island is reviewed and taken into consideration by the Minister of Justice, who then authorizes the detention of this person or the removal of this person from St. Martin. Following question is, why are persons being held in immigration, or where are persons being held in immigration detention? Currently, persons in immigration detention are held at the Foreigner Detention Center. This is in Simpson Bay, and the facility is operated by the Immigration and Border Control Services. Under what policy or law is it allowed to hold someone in immigration detention? I refer to Article 16 in conjunction with Article 19 of the National Ordinance on Admission and Expulsion, the LTU. The LTU provides the Minister of Justice with the authority to detain individuals to facilitate their removal from the country under specific conditions. This authority is exercised when the individual does not meet the requirements to legally reside in the country and is subject to expulsion procedures. Detention may be applied when there are grounds to believe that the individual, 1, poses a risk to public order, public peace, safety, or moral standards, or 2, that that person may attempt to evade the removal process, such as by absconding or failing to cooperate with immigration authorities. The LTU grants the minister discretionary powers to make this determination, allowing for detention without the need for a formal judicial order. However, these powers must be exercised within the bounds of the law, ensuring that the decision is reasonable, proportional, and necessary for the enforcement of immigration control and the protection of public order. Who is authorized to do that, and what is the process? As I mentioned, this is stipulated in the LTU, Landsverordening Toelating en Uitzetting, or in English, the National Ordinance on Admission and Expulsion, and it is the Minister of Justice who has the authority to do so. Of course, the minister does have the authority to also have a mandaatregeling. So in that sense, the minister can mandate immigration officers to act on behalf of the minister as well. And while this wasn't the question, there is currently no mandaatregeling in place. So currently, all requests or decisions for such are signed by my personally. Question number 7, why and based on what law is this facility approved to be an immigration detention center? Who approved it and based on what standards? There are no explicit national or international laws on the approval of the immigration detention centers. In other words, the facilities don't have to be certified as such. However, the Law Enforcement Council, de Raad voor de Rechtshandhaving, supervises and inspects the quality and operations of the detention centers in the Caribbean part of the kingdom, also of our immigration detention center. The Raad voor de Rechtshandhaving also assesses the extent to which the recommendations of the European Committee for the Prevention of Torture and Inhuman, Degrading Treatment or Punishment, the CPT, are being followed. In its 2004 report on the treatment of detained immigrants in Sint Maarten, the Council was overall rather positive about the Grenshospitium, as we call it, the FDC, Foreigner Detention Center. They mentioned that though they had some critical remarks on the safety measures, the Council, in its own words, and I quote, has a positive image of the Foreigner Detention Center, and that its inspection shows, quote, that the treatment of illegal foreigners during immigration detention by judicial organizations can generally be considered humane, and that the CPT's recommendations have been partially followed. Minister, are you aware of the recent court decision whereby the court said that you are not allowed to ban a person after he or she has been sent back to their country of origin? What did the ministry do with this ruling? I am, in fact, aware of the ruling, and my personal opinion is that the ruling is in line with the principle of legality. From this principle, it follows that, that government powers are limited by law, and that every action needs to be also anchored in the basis of the law. So while the legal ban might align with the Richtlijnen, which is a policy document, it isn't in the law itself, which therefore makes it illegal in this sense. So in that, I wanted to then explain that for binding powers or authorities, which we say in Dutch, bindende bevoegdheden, these can't be attributed to policy. They need an anchor in a landsverordening, and which is the point here. So the ongewenst verklaring has to be explicitly regulated by law, specifically in the LTU. We see that, for example, this is done in the BES Islands, and in their legislation, there's Article 16D and E, which explicitly regulates the revocation of declaring a person to be an undesirable alien and attaching legal consequences to such. That being said, in the future, we will have to amend the LTU if we wish to implement this ongewenste verklaring.
You mentioned briefly the situation at Flamingo, and you know, I am aware that the workers met with you, and they also met with Member of Parliament on the ongoing situation, alleged abuse and you know, victimization and such. There, my question is: you said there was a control. Did the control yield any kind of results that is pleasing to the minister, who is also a former inspector of education? I mean, you know what inspection is like. You know that workers, inspectors especially, are not supposed to be leaking information to the company or informing them that there is going to be a control. I mean, you are aware of this. I discussed this with you. And to say that, you know, you request more information, did the inspection that took place, did it yield control? Are you satisfied with it? Is the workers, the local workers that are paying taxes on St. Maarten, have they received any form of satisfaction thus far?
But as I said, it's an ongoing case. So I cannot divulge exactly what the findings are, but I have received a final report, I think day before yesterday, pertaining to it. So I still have to go through that report in order for me to form an opinion on that. With regard to leaking of information, what's not, I have not received any complaints, or I have not received any, how do you say, besides the conversation with you, there has been nothing brought to my knowledge with regard to leaking of information from the inspectorate.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Bibi. Emma?
My question, Minister, is regarding the new hospital. You've given an update as to the projected completion date, but could you give us an update on what has been the total change in price from the time of the original contract to now? I understood there may have been a number of price changes. So could you explain what's just the total difference in price between the time of the original contract to now? as well as have there been any significant design changes to the hospital from the original contract to now?
Yeah. With regard to your first question with the difference between the pricing, unfortunately, I don't have that information. I would get that information and get back to you at the next press briefing. And with regard to the design, yes, I am aware as well from prior. I am aware of well that prior to taking office that there was a change in the design. Exactly what the changes were, I'm not aware. That information I can also get back to you at a later date. But coincidentally, today we do have a meeting with stakeholders, and St. Martin Medical Center is one of them that we're going to discuss about the finances as well. So hopefully in that meeting, I can get that information directly.
Are you SXM insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXM is cardless. Request your My SXM account today and enter the virtual office of SXM. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXM, yeah, your social and health insurances.
It's time for a new brand that is as bold, vibrant, and colorful as the island of St. Martin, with colors drawn from our diversity, cultural heritage, and nature. Our breathtaking beaches, waters, and sun, the majestic brown pelican, our national symbol, the radiant yellow sage, our national flower, the historic border monument signifying the Dutch and French sides, our exciting cruise, yachting, and boating ports, renowned Maho Beach and St. Martin Airport, the hub to the Caribbean. All these parts come together to create the shape of the island of St. Martin. More than a logo. It's a new brand that engages, excites, and will inspire travelers to book. It's time to tell the St. Martin story, to reintroduce travelers to St. Martin, to honor our past, to embrace our present, and shape our future. Our culture and diversity, Dutch and French sides, unrivaled cuisine, twice the nightlife, entertainment, and shopping, cruises, boating, and yachting, twice the adventure, exploration, and relaxation. Splendid and scenic accommodations. Pinel, Tentamar, and island hopping in the Caribbean. Whatever your taste, St. Martin has more. Experience twice the Caribbean. St. Martin.
Join us for our first breast cancer support group session for the year. The Still Beautiful, Positive, and Electrolytes Foundation are excited to announce the first breast cancer support group meeting for the year. It is scheduled for Thursday, January 30th. The meeting will be held at the RC4C Foundation building located at 80 Illidge Road, number 60, Unit 1.1, from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. This support group, which was first launched in May 2023, provides a safe and supportive environment for individuals affected by breast cancer. The meeting will be facilitated by Ms. Shirley Saboni, who will lead the discussion on a topic, New Year Bingo Card. We invite all members of the community to join us for an evening of support, encouragement, and shared experiences. This is a safe space for breast cancer patients, survivors, family members, and loved ones. Let's come together and share stories, offer support, and uplift each other. Whether you're newly diagnosed, navigating treatment, or thriving in survivorship, this group is here for you. Let's start the year with hope, connection, and strength. For more information, please contact Still Beautiful Foundation at stillbeautifuls xm@gmail.com or telephone 721 588 8020. We look forward to seeing you there.
the motions in general in Parliament because if I take for example the issue of the one that was initiated by MP Arian on holding a referendum. Now if I, which I did of course, look at that motion, the motion is not executable, period. And when you know this, and of course I shared my opinion with my colleagues, especially those in our faction, and if you know this, why would you just to say you're going along, go along with a motion like that? First of all, and I want to repeat what I said in the meeting, holding a referendum is the initiative of Parliament. Here is where that discussion starts. That's one part. Secondly, we have been in Parliament having a discussion. We have had roundtable discussion, so to speak, on the matter of where do we want to go as a country constitutionally. We have agreements even as recently as the last IPCO in June of 2024 regarding this topic. We have spoken about the need to address the issues we face today. The stipulations, in fact, the constitutional reference to a referendum states not only that it is the initiative of the Parliament, so we can't throw it in the lap, whether it be preparation or not, of the government, but it also states that a referendum is to follow, can follow, you don't have to do it for every decision, but can follow a decision taken by the Parliament or the government. What does this imply? That means that we in Parliament have to have a discussion on the topic, reach a decision, and then ask the population how they think about that decision taken by the Parliament. It can also regard a decision taken by the government, that then Parliament initiates a referendum to hear how the people think. So it puts the onus on us first to have this discussion and then make a decision and then say, what do you think? We have to do the work in order to then ask the people of St. Martin, how do you think about this particular decision, this particular direction of your Parliament? And so that is why the stressing on that matter and saying, don't try for, I don't know what to really call it, to sort of spring this on us. This topic, in my opinion, is so important that wouldn't you want to have a sit down with your colleagues and before you just come and spring this motion in a debate on the budget? So even that is debatable in terms of, does it pertain to this discussion and this topic? So it's not a matter of whether we think a referendum should take place, whether we think what a topic should be, but our referendum stipulations in the Constitution requires the Parliament to have that discussion, make a decision, and then ask population, what do you think? So all the population should be involved, not only what I think should happen, or Dimar or yourself, Viren, but let us really hear from the people how they think about what we are planning to do for their future. So I think it was important. Dimar, you want to say something to that?
And this is where the politics comes into play. As you know, I'm new, so I'm getting used to how things are brought. And we all know, and everybody in the hall knew, that this is not the way to bring it forth. It is not a directive on government. It's something that's initiated within Parliament. But of course, what the headlines will say is 7 for, 7 against. Nowhere did the headline say that MP Labega stated that he is for having the discussion. He is for bringing it across once it's initiated the correct way. You see, we can't pick and choose what procedures to follow accordingly and what procedures not to. There was huge discussions in Parliament against some of the ministers for supposedly not following proper procedures and things like that. But here we have Parliament, ourselves, who are not following the proper procedures. So once it's brought forth the correct way, I think everybody is open to having the discussion. We are representatives of the people, and we have to inform the people. But one of the main things that stood out to me is the push for independence has been ongoing for a very long time. And I feel that a lot of education should have been going on doing that push as well. Because at the end of the day, people barely understand what they're voting for now when it comes to Parliament. So it really needs to be a heavy educational campaign on what independence means, what are the options, what are the pros, what are the cons. Me, myself, last night was going over a bunch of information on other countries and, you know, their independence journey to better, you know, inform myself and be able to educate the rest. So once it's brought across the right way, I don't think anyone has a problem with it.
SXM, your social and health insurance is SXM, your social and health insurance is.
Are you SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXV, yeah, your social and health insurance is.
U.S. deportation flights have just landed in Guatemala as part of President Trump's ongoing immigration crackdown. CNN's senior national correspondent David Culver joins us now from Guatemala City. So, David, what do we know about these flights?
Hey, Pamela, yeah, you're right. The one that just touched down, I'm going to be very careful what we're showing here because some of the folks have asked that we not show their faces. So sometimes you'll see the camera go down to our feet. But let me give you a sense of the process because you saw them perhaps stepping onto the tarmac, and now they're at the space where you can see these folks in yellow vests who are registering these folks back into Guatemala. So for many of them, it's been years since they've lived here, and now they're trying to figure out the reintegration process. And we're just going to be careful with faces here too. But let me just show you over here. This is where they're walking up and getting any sort of necessities, some snacks, toiletries. They have everything from Crocs to t-shirts, shoelaces, because if you notice, many of them here, I'll show you this right down here, he doesn't have shoelaces on because that's part of the standard procedure for security to remove anything that could be used as a weapon or self-harm. And they've even got toothpaste and some other snacks. I see them putting their fingerprints down, and then a lot of them come over this way and they start charging their phones. I'll just move these sticks over here so you can come around here, Jerry. And that's when they're able to then try to finally reconnect with relatives and loved ones who might come to this space to pick them up. Now, as they're being registered in by, you can see this is some of the organizations that are helping in trying to get them sorted and essentially processed back into Guatemala. They'll then come over to this porch and they've got some of their belongings here. I mean, I can see a guitar case. You can see these are almost like potato sacks, Pamela, that have some of their belongings and stapled together. And then inside I've seen everything from Wawa wrappers to CVS receipts, so things that were just in their pockets that they emptied before boarding.
Wow. And you also spoke to the vice president, right, of Guatemala. What did she say?
So the vice president welcomed this group here. It's interesting because they leave the U.S. as criminals because they illegally entered, and so that's now why they're being deported back here to Guatemala. And the vice president made a point to say that obviously this is a complicated situation. She tried to redirect it mostly to the migrants and what their situation is, but I asked about relations between the U.S. and Guatemala, especially for what we saw in the past 24 hours with Colombia. And she said, look, that's Colombia's situation. The U.S. and Guatemala have their own relationship, so she was trying to be very careful in how she navigated that. I also asked, as we kind of walk around here, I want to give you another sense of some of this. I also asked about what's different essentially between what happened the past 4 years under President Biden and what's changed since under President Trump. As far as the numbers and the capacity of folks who have been deported, that has not changed according to the vice president. That's still the same for what we saw under President Biden. In fact, in some cases, it's even gone down a little bit. What has changed, though, Pamela, is the use of military flights, and that began last Thursday here to Guatemala, and it's continuing with another military aircraft that will bring another round of deportees here to this airport in about 2 or 3 hours from now.